Okay, can everyone see the slides? Sometimes Teams does stuff weird where you can't. Good. Okay, while we're going along, if you have any questions or want us to slow down or anything like that, you can just type it in the question box and we will try our best to answer. Although, for some reason, it doesn't want to show me questions. This does not actually. Just one moment. There's always technical difficulties. We don't have that question thing, so I don't know why it pops up. Okay. So if anyone has questions, they can do it. And we will get started in just 1 minute at 8:10. Okay, why don't we get started? So this is going to be our first workshop, and I think this might be our first event. So we are doing outdoor skills workshops. Normally I would be joined by the lovely Brian, but he is currently on a big long 400-kilometer canoe trip called the Minas Link in Algonquin. So he'll hopefully be at our next workshop. So this one's going to focus on the environment, and we're going to focus on plants and animals and weather and things like that. So just to start off, we like to start each of these events with a land acknowledgement. So McMaster University recognizes and acknowledges that it is located on the traditional territories of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee nations, and that it is protected with the lands within the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. So this is just a very brief agenda with the key points we're going to go through. So we anticipate this will be about an hour of talking and questions at the end, or questions throughout. So just a little bit about me for those who didn't read the bio from the coordinator stuff. So I'm in my second year of Masters of Biology here at McMaster. I'm studying native bees and other pollinators within the Hamilton area and seeing how they react to different floral abundances, which is flowers, through time and in different habitats. I did my undergrad here at McMaster, and I'm also president of the Outdoor Club, so if you have any questions related to that, and a coordinator with Nature at McMaster. So just to start things off, we're trying to sort of push iNaturalist this year with all students and faculty and staff at the university. It's a great citizen science tool, super easy to use, and it's completely free. So we just have a very short 2-minute video we're going to watch, and then we'll continue.
Noah, I don't think we can hear sound on it.
Oh, that's weird.
Sorry.
Here, let's see if I take my headphones out, if it's loud enough to hear. hear now?
I think it's lagging now.
Well, maybe we'll just have it so people can see the video afterwards then if it doesn't work.
Yeah, I can send it around in the email next week.
We can afterwards. It's just a short 2-minute video that explains basically how to use the app and how to upload observations and download it and things like that. Headphones working again. We will post that later for you guys. So just to go over what iNaturalist is, it's, like I said before, a citizen science project. There's different projects in pretty much every country all over the world, and it basically uses a software that has photo recognition. So you take a photo, and then the computer tries to predict what species it's looking at. And so the more people that use it, the better it gets. It's machine learning technology. And you upload it, it's got a little coordinate on it, and then a lot of different scientists and government agencies use the data to track species and monitor certain environments. At McMaster, we have projects for our natural lands, and many other groups do as well. There's apps for your phone, or you can just use it on the computer. You can also just use it if you want to poke around and see what wildlife or plants are in your area that other people have seen. There's also another app called Seek, which is run by iNaturalist. It just doesn't involve uploading everything, so it's a little bit easier to use. It just tells you what something is, so that's an option as well. And just if you're using it, make sure your location is accurate. And if you're photographing something in your garden or something in a zoo, that you just mark it as not wild, because that kind of messes with the algorithm. And it works for all species, fungus, plant, animal, just about everything. So the main aspect of our talk is going to be risk in the outdoors. Some of what they are, where they could occur, when they could occur, and how do we prevent and manage them. And this little image on the right here actually happens to be from one of our outdoor club trips. So they can happen to everyone, even the most experienced groups. So we're going to start off with weather. So there's lots of different things that can happen weather related, but we're going to focus on the 3 most common things that people either witness or have happened to them or that we have personal stories of. And that's thunderstorms, flash flooding, and heat. There are other things like wildfires and tornadoes and bad weather and hailstorms and all kinds of other crazy things that many people will have stories of if you talk to them. Ontario this year, and especially last year and the years before that, have had some really big issues with wildfires up north, but that's something that you normally aren't going to experience if you're camping because they've closed the area long before you'd ever end up there. So for thunderstorms, it's probably one of the most dangerous aspects because of lightning, as many of you are probably already aware. So our little part here at the beginning about getting off the water is for canoe camping or just canoeing or kayaking on the water in general. So it's critical to get off the water whenever you hear thunder or see lightning, because that means the storm is close enough that lightning can strike you. If you can hear the thunder, it's close enough. There's things you can do to guess how far away a storm is, but lightning in nature is unpredictable, so it can occur even if you don't think it's close. So a very good skill to have is this calculation right here. You can make a mental note of it. Is that when you see a flash of lightning, count in your head how many seconds go, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and so on, between when you see the lightning and when you hear that crack of thunder. And basically that is going to tell you roughly how far away that lightning bolt was striking. So you take the seconds in your head and you divide by 3, and that's roughly how far. So 3 seconds is 1 kilometer, 10 seconds is about 3 kilometers, and so on. And if you hear the thunder immediately, then the lightning's basically on top of you. And with that comes making sure your camp setup is in a place where you're not under deadfall trees or on top of tree roots and things like that. You don't want to be in open fields during thunderstorms because of the obvious risk where if you're the highest part in the field, you're probably the one that's going to get hit. So it's staying low to the ground. Don't go in areas where you're going to have conductivity running like tree roots. So if lightning strikes the crown of a tree, it'll go right through the roots. So if your tent is under big trees, then the lightning will go right under there. And you can help by insulating the bottom of your tent with sleeping pads and life jackets and things like that. Flash flooding is another big risk, especially on canyons and caves and along rivers and creeks. Something that's just a little trickle during normal conditions can easily go to raging rivers. I've had just myself, even hiking in Algonquin, where I walked across what I thought was just a little stream, little creek, must have only been a few inches deep at most. And it rained all weekend long. And when I hiked out of that trail, it was about 4 feet of water and rapids in that same section. And you basically had to like cling to trees as you were walking across, hoping you're not getting swept away. So it can be risky. You just got to be aware of your situations. Don't put yourself in any situation where you could drown or get swept away. If you're going to hike through a river that's flooded, you always want to take one strap off your backpack. Just if you fall, it's better to let the backpack go than you with it. Those kind of things. So situational awareness is really important. The next thing is severe heat. So that's pretty easy, but a lot of people don't really think about it because they don't drink enough water and they don't drink enough salts with that. So no salts, but lots of water can also lead to certain heat exhaustion type issues. So wear hats, sun protection like sunscreen, and lots of waters, loose layers. Don't overexert yourself. Take lots of breaks, whatever you need to do. That was sort of our most boring topic, but important to cover. Next, we're going to go on to some more interesting things, at least for me, which is plants. So I've got a list of about 6 or 7 plants that are what we call touch-sensitive plants. We're not going to go over things that are poisonous to ingest or anything like that. These are just things, if you touch them, could cause a reaction. I'm going to focus on poison ivy for the most part because it's something that most people have trouble identifying and don't really realize all the different forms it can take. So we have 2 species here, and they can appear as little tiny plants that are only a few inches off the ground. They can be big shrubs that are about 1 meter high and all bushy. They can be a woody vine around a tree or even a creeping ground vine. There's a huge array of colors, green, red, yellow, purple. They can have white berries, no berries, smooth or jaggedy leaves, like you've got jagged leaves in this. But they always have leaves of 3. That rule always applies, but they can look drastically different depending on where you are. The reaction is caused by an oil, and it appears a few hours to a few days after, so you won't necessarily know what you touched. And then the reaction can take anywhere from 1 week to about a month to disappear. It can be annoying and itchy, but it's not going to cause any long-term damage unless you're really allergic to it. So these are a bunch of photos, and all of them show poison ivy. So we've got greens, we've got reds, we've got yellows, we've got white berries, and then we've got this hairy vine in the middle. So that's what it typically looks like when it's on trees. And that can be an issue when camping because a lot of people will accidentally cut these woody vines thinking they're just more wood for the fire. And if you burn poison ivy, it releases the oils and aerosolizes them. You can actually breathe them in and burn the inside of your lungs. So you just want to be aware of that. This is just mainly not to scare you, just to keep you aware that it can come in many different shapes and sizes and forms, so be aware while you're out on the trail. I always suggest wearing long pants and socks while hiking in the bush, but that's a personal preference. And just make sure you wash yourself off when you come back from the woods. Wash your hands, wash your legs, take a shower, because if you wash everything down within a few hours, even if you got the oils on you, they'll wash off and they won't burn you basically. It takes a number of hours for it to actually soak into your pores. The next few plants we're going to fly through just because they're less common or not as dangerous. And so one of them happens to be poison sumac, almost unlikely to find it because it's found in swamps and bogs, and most people aren't really walking through there unless they're in really northern Ontario where it's boggy. It causes similar things to poison ivy. We have wild parsnip, which is one of our non-native plants. It's in the carrot family, has yellow flowers, grows in disturbed areas. Can cause quite a few blisters and reactions, but it's not that common in the province yet. We also have cow parsnip, which is our native one, but causes the same things as the wild carrot. And we have giant hogweed, which if you're from Ontario, you've probably heard in the news many times. Every year it comes up in some sort of CBC article about some kid who got burned by it. It can cause pretty severe blisters and scarring. So you do want to be aware that it exists and it's out there, but it's not super common. But it often grows along rivers and floodplains and forests and things. So if you do see a super tall plant, you can see it grows up to 5 meters with these crazy leaves on it. Just avoid it. You can report it if you see it, and they'll come remove it in these crazy hazmat suits. But overall, you don't have to be too concerned. This is just a quick comparison. Another one happens to be wood nettle. This one is really common and gets a lot of people, but it's pretty harmless. You'll just get a slight stinging sensation that lasts a few minutes for most people. It's got little hairs on it, so you often get it on your knees as you walk through dense brush, but it's otherwise harmless. Same thing with stinging nettle, it does the exact same thing. Next, we'll go on to our animals and animal conflicts. So we will go through bears first, and then I'll touch on a couple of other things. So first and foremost, we only have 2 species of bears in Ontario, black bears, and we do have polar bears, but they are found nowhere near southern Ontario. So they are not something we're going to talk about, not something you have to worry about. They're in the far, far north on the Arctic Ocean. So for most part, you're going to be dealing with either a fleeing bear or a habituated bear or a defensive bear. The predatory black bear is pretty much unheard of. There are almost no cases in the history of records in Ontario of this happening, so it's pretty much something you don't need to worry about. For the most part, a black bear is going to completely run away as soon as they hear or see you. They are big chickens of the woods, as most experienced campers will call them. They really don't like people. The only time they'll approach people is when they're habituated from food. So they'll become aware of you. All you have to do is give them space, move away, and they'll normally leave you alone. They may go after your granola bar or something like that. But you just give them their space, you walk away, and there's no problems. Defensive bears normally happen when there's cubs, but they can also get defensive around food, and they'll just make big huffing sounds, kind of like snorts or heavy breathing, and then they might like stare you down, or they call it bluff charging, where they like run a couple feet but don't actually come at you. That's more where you want to get some concern. But again, if you just sort of back away slowly, all it wants is for you to give it space, and it will pretty much always leave you alone. There are things you can do like whistling or loud noises or being in groups, and you should be fine. If for some unheard reason you came into this predatory black bear thing, what you do is you don't run, you fight back. You throw things at it, you get big, you get tall. Black bears, if you fight back, will normally leave you alone. It's not the case if you go to Western Ontario with grizzly bears. There's something different you're supposed to do there. But we're just going to talk about black bears because that's what's in Ontario. We do not have grizzly bears. There's a number of different tools and a lot of debate around all four of these different things when it comes to bears. I can give you my opinion on it, but really it's your own research and your own opinion that's going to have to be what you end up deciding with, because I could spend a whole talk just on these topics because there's a huge debate within the outdoor industry about what you should use, when you should use it, if you should use it, if it's effective, that sort of stuff. So first and foremost is bear spray. It's basically super concentrated pepper spray. And it does exactly what you would think pepper spray would do, and that is you aim it at the bear and you spray it. To use it effectively, though, you have to be within a couple meters. And when I say a couple meters, I mean like 2 meters. So that is honestly too close for comfort for me, anyways. And if it's a windy day, you can have it blow back in your face. So I personally don't carry it unless I was in out west with grizzly bears. Ontario, it's not really a concern, but a lot of people bring it for comfort. A lot of parks recommend you carry it. The outdoor club does carry it sometimes, but it's a personal choice. Next, we have bear bangers. They're basically like a little, almost like a grenade or a flare, you could say, that you shoot out of this little pen thingy, and it shoots and it makes a big bang sound from some gunpowder, and some of them have colors and stuff to scare bears away. A lot of parks have banned the use of these, so you have to know where you're going if you're even allowed to bring them, because they find people were either harassing wildlife or they like shoot them at the bear and they miss and the bear comes running at them instead. To use them effectively, you're just supposed to like shoot them up in the air, not actually at the animal. So I don't recommend using them. They're also, you have to like get them all prepped and take them out, and they're not as fast to use. Very easy tool is just a bear horn, which is just a glorified air horn. It's very effective. It's not going to stop necessarily a bear from attacking you, but it would stop one charging at you or one that might be in our sort of defensive bear state. And they'll normally hightail it out of there if you hear loud sounds like that, similar to like banging pots and pans, but just way louder. Bear bells, um, a lot of people say they don't do anything and they don't really work. But the idea behind them is if you clip it onto your backpack and you're walking along the trail, the bear hears it, they'll be like, oh, there's a human somewhere, and they'll just avoid coming near you. And for the most part, that's pretty true. If they hear it, they will avoid you. But that being said, talking loudly as you walk does pretty much the same thing. But I normally recommend them if you're doing some kind of solo camping on the trails where you're not going to be chit-chatting with someone as you walk along. But if you're in big groups, it's not really needed. If people wish to talk more about these later, we can start a group chat, or you can message me if you have any questions. Next, we have moose. So if you talk to an experienced camper in Ontario, they will tell you to be more afraid of moose than of bears. They are huge animals. So if you think about how big you think a moose is, think bigger. They are most active at dawn and dusk, and they like marshy areas because that's where their food is. They mainly eat aquatic vegetation, but they like to be left alone. So you see a moose, just give it a lot of space. They are normally fairly docile unless they're mothers with calves. But if spooked, they can be dangerous, especially bulls during mating season or calves with young. They really do not like dogs. The moose sees a dog, they basically think it's a wolf because that's a natural predator of them and they look very similar. So they have been known to attack dogs sort of at random for no reason. Um, that's just something to be aware of. So if you bring a dog camping, don't let it go running off leash way ahead of you. Keep it nearby so it won't potentially disrupt any wildlife. Um, And if for some absurd reason you're being charged by a moose, it's funny, but yes, run in zigzags. They are built like a tank, but they can pretty much only run straight. They are so large they can't make sharp turns. So if you're running in between trees and all over the place, it's not going to be able to follow you. But that's very unlikely to happen. The most common animal you are going to have a problem with is chipmunks, skunks, raccoons, and squirrels. This is sort of every camper's dream team of worst nightmares. Everything else pretty much will leave you alone. These are where you're going to have your issues. So they're cute, they're cuddly, but they wreak havoc on your equipment and your food. So they will chew through your packs, chew through your tents, chew through your food, chew through your bear barrels and food barrels and rope and all kinds of stuff. And they will pretty much go after anything scented, whether it's food or not. I've had squirrels go after sunscreen, chipmunks go after lip chap, squirrels go after bug spray for whatever reason. They just make a mess. So basically, the number one rule is doesn't matter what it is, if it's got a scent, don't keep it in your tent. Put it in with the rest of the food. And then keep that food far away from the rest of your campsite. You don't have to worry from a safety perspective necessarily, but from keeping your gear intact and your food not eaten, that's what you want to do. And make sure you don't have wrappers in your pockets when you go to bed, and toothpaste, sunscreen, deodorants, anything and everything said comes out. So wildproof. So that's really what you guys are probably most interested in. Like I said before, we want to remove all scented items from your pack and from anywhere else in your tent. Check your jacket pockets, those kind of things. The worst thing you can have is squirrel chew through your tent. You're really not probably going to worry about a bear coming through your tent. It's going to be the squirrels and raccoons. And then the best way to protect unwanted visitors from both your tent and your campsite is just keep it clean. Clean your dishes and dump the water far away from your campsite. Um, Clean up, keep all your garbage in one place, that sort of stuff. And then when you're out camping, there's sort of two barrel type ways to carry food, and that's these bear barrels, which are bear proof containers that basically bears are not supposed to be able to chew or crawl their way through. They're smaller, they're about 10 liters, and they're ideal for hiking trips. And if you go to places like the Adirondacks in the States, they're actually required. They don't let you camp in the park unless you put your food in these, and then you cache them away from your campsite so you don't need to hang them or anything like that. And then the other thing is food barrels, mainly used for canoe camping. They are not bear proof, as many people can attest. Bears will pull them open, they'll bite through them. It's hard plastic, but they can get through them if they want to. We have a demo barrel you would have seen if we had went on a trip as moose that is just completely filled with bear teeth and claw marks that we found one year. So it does happen. And we're just going to go over a few different storage methods for your food. One of them being bear hangs. This is a lot of people's favorite thing to do when they're either hiking or canoeing, but there are other options. So some parks, like Bruce Peninsula National Park, some places in Algonquin, and some others, the camps and park staff have actually built these sort of metal bear hang posts where some of them have wires already built in. They're very fancy. You basically just hook your bag on and hoist it up, and you're good to go. But most places you go backcountry camping will not have this, and you'll have to do it yourself. So it requires you to find a big tall tree, one that has nice big branches. You need to bring rope and normally a pulley with you, unless your food is really light, in which case that wouldn't be necessary. You go about 100 meters away from your campsite, because you don't want a bear or a raccoon or anything anywhere near your food or campsite. And then you basically throw it over like this next diagram shows. You're going to throw it up at least 12 to 15 feet up in the air, over a branch with pulley attached. You hook it up, you hoist your food up. You want to make sure it's 6 feet out from the tree because black bears and other critters can climb trees, and then they can kind of reach out and grab your food if they're any closer. And then you just tie off to the bottom somewhere on another tree, on a rock, something like that. And then bears can normally not get at it, and raccoons can't get at it, and mice and squirrels and all those other animals. You can also use bear-resistant food containers, in which case you don't need to do that, which we'll talk about in a minute. But before that, we're going to talk about bear canoes, which can only be done while canoeing. Some people don't like to do it because they say there's a risk still of a bear tipping your canoe or anything like that, although I've never heard of that happening. And it happens to be one of my favorite methods to do while canoeing. And it basically involves going out in 2 canoes. You tie 1 rope to shore into a canoe, and then you tie the other end of the canoe to another rope, and you tie it to a big heavy rock, and you canoe out with 2 canoes, and then you throw the rock in the water way out there, and that acts as an anchor, and it sort of positions the canoe floating out in the lake, and then you take the people who are in one canoe and put them in the other canoe, and you canoe back. So it leaves one canoe out there with your food and dirty dishes, and then the idea is that a bear would have to swim out because they can't stand on the bottom of the lake bed. They wouldn't be able to get at the canoe, and they wouldn't be able to get at your food. It would be too difficult, and they just leave it alone. It's super easy to do, and it's my preferred method when canoe camping. It doesn't really work on rivers for obvious reasons because there's a current, and sometimes it can be hard if the lake is really deep. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward, unless you're canoeing alone, in which case I would suggest bear hangs. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it with swimming, which is not fun to camp with. The final option is what's called caching. So it kind of looks like this when you're using a food barrel. Similar concept if you were using one of those little black bear barrel caches. You walk your food out at least 100 meters. You find a tree. You place your barrel at the bottom of the tree, and then you tie a rope around it. So if a bear or other animal comes up, they're not going to be able to pull the barrel away and sort of roll it away or roll it down the hill or who knows what. And then it'll still be there in the morning. If you're using a food barrel like in this image, that will not prevent a bear from getting in your food barrel. It should prevent most other animals, but it won't stop a bear. But it may deter them. If you're using a bear barrel, an actual one of those 10-liter caches that are bear proof, it would prevent a bear. So that's the gist of our talk. And I'd be happy to go over a few questions or elaborate on some of the other topics if people want to go further. I wanted to sort of give us a starting point for our other outdoor workshops, and we'll have a Google form for people that I'll post in the event page. We have some ideas of what we want to do for our other 2 workshops, but if people have anything they really want covered, we'd be happy to modify it and add those things in or add additional workshops if needed to just go over these questions. And in the future, when things finally do open up, the Outdoor Club does have most of the gear you need for camping, so you can reach out to us once if you need help planning a trip, getting resources, or borrowing gear. So if you want, you can just post questions in the comments tab, and I will try my best to answer.
Thanks for the talk, Noah. I know personally. Oh, I think. Are you on mute?
No?
Hi. Thanks for the talk. I know personally, I don't think my camp does the caching right. I think we literally just, maybe Hannah can speak to this, we just hike it out into the woods, throw a tarp over it, and put some rocks on it. And I'm like, that's not gonna keep a bear from, or an animal. It's more the chipmunks, like you said, that you have to worry about.
For the most part, the small critters are what you have issues with, chipmunks and squirrels and raccoons, and that putting a rock on top is enough to stop those guys. The only idea behind tying it to a tree is something bigger can't carry it off.
Yeah.
I've been in groups where people haven't tied it and they're on a site with a hill and the like food barrel goes rolling down a hill when a bear knocks it over, and it's not fun.
Gravity's more your enemy than
Yeah. The last thing you need is your food rolling into the lake.
Yeah. Does anyone have any like run-ins with nature they want to talk about? Like whether that's like interesting weather stories you've had or questions for Noah or maybe any animal encounters, whether positive or maybe more scary.
Yeah. Anything. People can share photos, questions. There's a lot of information that went over, but
Yeah, I didn't know about the poison ivy in the fire thing. Not that I don't think I've burned poison ivy in the fire, but like you said, easy to cut down a vine of it and think it's wood. Yeah.
I have a funny story. Here, I can turn my video on. About bear spray and the moose program. So when we do the trip, we go through a place called Camp Erewhon, and they source all of our gear. So they always include bear spray as part of their protocol in the gear that they give us for each group. And so a few years back, oh my gosh, must have been like 5 years back now or something like that. We had this one leader, and she was great. She was super experienced. She's actually, I think at the time or at one point, the co-president of the Outdoors Club with Noah. So she was leading her group, and she got up early in the morning, was like, you know what? I'm going to make breakfast. I'm going to get started on breakfast early for my group. And if you're familiar with camp stoves, which are basically just like little travel stoves that you take camping as well in case it's raining or you don't want to start a fire, some places recommend you do that if there's fire bans. So anyways, the way that these camp stoves work is you bring like this red fuel canister that's really similar to like a canister of bear spray. And I guess it was really early in the morning and maybe she didn't have a great sleep. And so she grabs a canister out of the bag and is like trying to open it, like thinking it's a fuel canister. She's like really difficult. She's like, what's going on? Why can't I open this today? And then all of a sudden it like pops open and it was bear spray. And then the bear spray just sprays all over her. And at this point, people are like, everyone's starting to wake up, come out of their tents. And so they come out of their tents, and the wind, there's obviously a little bit of wind because there's always a little bit of a draft. And that sprays all the bear spray into all the participants' faces who are just like coming out of their tent. It's early in the morning. And so we always share that story as a funny little check which canister you're opening if you have both bear spray and the fuel canister. But
what a
pardon me?
way to wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
Abrupt awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always a funny story that gets told because it's funny. And everyone was okay, so that's what matters most. But
it's one of the reasons why we don't always recommend bear spray, because a lot of people don't necessarily know how to use it properly or will use it accidentally on themselves. And so it takes some practice, and sometimes it's better just not to have it. It's a good safety net, but
yeah, I guess I can share like a pretty wild weather story. If people would like to hear about weather. But I was camping in Algonquin Park, pretty classic. And it was our group's like lay day, which is when we just get to hang around camp and chill out. And we see these like large thunderclouds rolling in. So we call our group back from like wherever they're hanging out in our campsite, and we get the whole camp like packed up, the hammock packed down. And yeah, it just started getting really windy and thunder and lightning. So me and my like volunteer student were like singing through the thunder and lightning with the like students who are like 13, 14-year-old girls. And my co-staff was out like, basically there's trees that were falling over on our site. And his biggest fear was people getting killed by trees falling. And my biggest fear was people getting struck by lightning in a camping situation. So we were like interestingly matched that way. But everyone was fine, and the trees were fine and not near our tents, which was really good. But it was kind of scary. But like weather happens, it's important to be prepared and have your site cleaned and be able to seek shelter.
Sound like something's calling for someone?
Oh, that was mine. Sorry. Anyway, I don't know if other people have other stories they want to share or questions for Noah. It sounds like some people are pretty interested in joining the Outdoors Club, which it's really welcoming. It's really friendly. It's open to anyone, whether you have like not much experience or a lot of experience or absolutely no experience at all, and you just want to try something out. It's open to everybody.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really sick trips that I don't want to take away too much of what Noah's going to say on when we have the Outdoors Club presentation, but this year we were supposed to go to Hawaii in May, right after school finished. We've been to the Grand Canyon before. We do Killarney, Algonquin. We go to the Adirondacks. I would say McMaster is a pretty great place for outdoor clubs in general. I would think Noah could speak to the details of this, but I think we're the biggest, or at least the club that does the most variety of trips across both Canada and the US. Like most groups aren't even allowed to, I think like Queens isn't even allowed to go a certain amount of kilometers outside of the university. So we're pretty lucky to be at MAC, where our admin allows us to do some pretty cool adventures.
Yeah. I know when I was like picking a university, I was like looking at the Outdoors Club schedule and I was like, holy moly, like they're the most active between the like couple schools that I was looking through. And yeah, I just thought it was really cool and really wanted to be a part. So promise over your 4, 5, 6 years here, you'll get lots of trips in, hopefully.
We definitely offer the highest diversity of trips in Ontario, at least for Ontario universities. We have a lot of other university outdoor clubs, Queen, Guelph, Waterloo, Ottawa, that come actually on our trips as well. And so that just goes to show we go to so many different places and we have the expertise to do that. Luckily, we get a lot of great people that come in through the club and going to different places every year. So yes, as Hannah said and Alyssa said, we're always looking for new trips, and Hannah happens to be one of our trip coordinators, so we'd be happy to take suggestions. Obviously, right now, we can't really do anything, but we're hoping that will change soon, at least. We'll see how things go with COVID.
That's a
there's a question. Oh, were you answering that, Alyssa?
You go ahead, Martha. You know more of the hiking trails around.
Okay. So I'll just answer Rachel's first, and then we'll get to yours, Henry. So yeah, there's so many great trails on campus. If you're going to be coming and visiting McMaster specifically, if you go to the back of campus, right behind the football stadium, there's something called Coots Paradise. Yeah, exactly, Francis. There's Coots Paradise. So there's 2 different trail entrances there. If you see, there's a parking lot, and right at if you're like facing the forest on the right-hand side, there's an entrance to something called Ravine Road Trail. And that takes you to a few different trails that are really beautiful. They have lookout points onto the marsh there, which looks like a little bit like a lake. Really beautiful. And there's also something called Shegwin Trail, which is really short, like 15 minutes. It's behind Branton Hall, if you find that on campus. And it has a little bench. It's in a little marsh. It's so beautiful. A short drive away is McMaster Forest, which is a kind of a secret about, oh, Noah's writing the names of the trails. A kind of secret about McMaster. Honestly, not a lot of people know about Mac Forest. Sorry, I'm looking at all the things being posted in. Yeah, so the Nature McMaster page has a lot of areas, and we're also updating the site. So in like 1 or 2 weeks, it'll be a brand new, pretty site to look at. But that one has all the areas around there and a cool map that you can see everything. But Mac Forest is, Noah has to tell me the complete acreage, but has like an old growth forest, which is so beautiful, a prairie, it's pretty sick, and there's lots of trails there too. So
Yeah,
ton of places. That's actually one of my favorite things about Hamilton.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alyssa?
Oh, I was just gonna say some of my favorite places. If you have like access to a car, or if you feel safe going on the bus, which maybe not the case right now, but there's like Dundas Peak, which is really, really cool, and Webster's Falls is nearby that.
It's actually not open right now.
Oh, okay, not open right now. And then there's also Tiffany Falls, which is like a 5-minute bus ride. When you feel comfortable and safe to take the bus, like it's a 5-10 minute bus ride from campus, and it's like a short hike, but it's such a pretty waterfall. And then lots of other waterfalls.
Yeah, and I think it's Shaver Falls that's right by Tiffany. It's like a, I don't know, 15-minute hike from Tiffany. So
yeah, it's on the Bruce Trail.
And sorry, back to Henry's question. Does the Outdoors Club go outside Ontario in Canada? We do. So pretty much every year for the past, Noah can speak to this. I don't know why I'm answering these questions about the Outdoors Club. For the past couple of years, they've been going to Alberta and BC every year too. Is there anywhere else, Noah?
Yeah, we mainly go in Ontario. That's our #1 destination just because that's where we're located. It's closest, cheapest, that kind of stuff. We do a lot of stuff in New York because it's also so close. But within Canada, we do a lot of trips in Quebec, like Martha was saying, out in BC and Alberta. So we often go to Banff and Lake Louise and that area in Alberta. And then we have been on the West Coast in BC on some of the trails there, and West Coast Trail and Vancouver Island and some of the northern parts. And then Quebec, we go to some of the ski areas there, some of the smaller French provincial parks. Sometimes we just do city tours of like Montreal and Ottawa and Gatineau and Quebec City and things like that. We went to Nova Scotia once years ago, but we don't really go out east very often because it's really expensive and hard to get around. They don't have a good transit system. And we actually, about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, did a really cool trip. I wasn't around here, but they went to the Northwest Nunavut on Baffin Island. They backpacked across Baffin Island. It was a super cool trip. I would have jumped on it if I was around back then, and maybe one year we'll bring it back. But if you go to the Outdoor Club website, which I can post, we have a map. If you go to our map, let me just actually I can pull it up. McMaster Outdoor Club. I will pull it up for people to see quickly. So I will just share my screen for a moment. So this is the Outdoor Club website. I can post the link so people can find it later on. And if you go to our map tab here, it'll pull up this lovely little area, and it names some of the places we've been: Canada, US, Costa Rica, and it's got this Google map, and you can zoom out on it and sort of see there's little markers on all the places, or at least most of the places that the Outdoor Club has been. So if you zoom all the way out, you can kind of see we've sort of been all over North America. Out east actually isn't on there, but it's missing. It should be. Lots out west, the Grand Canyon area in the Midwest US. We've been down in Texas and Florida and Costa Rica, Hawaii, all over Ontario, up on Baffin Island here in the Nunavut. We've been lots over Quebec. We've done a big canoe trip up to James Bay in the past in Ontario, Sudbury area, Manitoulin, lots around Algonquin and Killarney, Bruce Penn, a lot of stuff in New York and Pennsylvania. So we've kind of been all over the place, but we're always looking for new places. Pretty much every year, every 2 years, we will add a new location we haven't been before. So we're always looking for new ideas because that's what makes it interesting.
If
people are also interested in Nunavut. Oh, sorry. On Wednesday, we have the Moose alumni chat, and one of the Moose alumni, he used to be a coordinator and started the Moose exchange program, which he'll talk about, but isn't running this year because we have no exchange students. But his name is Kripesh Patel, and he just a year ago moved to Nunavut and is working up there, I think, as an environmental assessment officer. So if you want to hear more stories, ask him for some pictures, see how he even found the opportunity in Nunavut. You can totally tune in on that call, or if you can't make it, we'll have the recording. We can also put you in contact with him because he's a really cool guy and also worked with the Outdoors Club for a year as well. He was at Max, so.
Yes, Kripesh is a past Outdoor Club president. He's done a lot with the department and with the club. Someone asked, Francis asked, how do you join the Outdoor Club? In most normal years, we tell you that you can get an Outdoor Club membership from the Athletic Center business office. That will not be open come the fall, so we're kind of thinking about how that's going to work for this year. But for the most part, at the bare minimum, we normally run a newsletter, so we ask if people want to join our email list, and then we send out at least once a month what trips are going on, what events going on that month and in the future, and everything is posted on our Facebook page and our website normally. But yeah, we will touch base. I'll post when I know. We're just trying to figure that out this year, if we'll just have an open membership or if we'll be able to do something. It's just a weird year for this year, but there will be ways to get involved, and the Outdoor Club will be continuing a lot of the things from Moose will carry over into Outdoor Club events. We'll continue to run outdoor skills workshops, speakers, and other things related to the outdoors. We could run a just photo sharing, trip sharing night if people are interested during the Moose and share some of the stories from Outdoor Club past trips if people want to see some photos about where we've been and cool stories of places and things that happened, things that went wrong. Everyone likes the horror stories sometimes. Whatever people are most interested in. So if people really want to do that, we can set that up as well. Does anyone have any other questions related to the Outdoor Club, to risk in the outdoors, animals, camping in general, whatever you'd like?
I would also just say for joining the Outdoors Club in the meantime, just like on Instagram and on Facebook. That's honestly the easiest way to just like join right now. And even not during COVID times, it's the best way to stay in contact and sort of join. Yeah, I would say that. But yes, questions. Question period now.
We will also, well, I will post a Google form that people can submit questions anonymously if people would feel more comfortable that way. You know, some people can get a little shy around questions, and then we can have a session we run where we go through all the questions that people had if we want. Does anyone have any story they want to share with the group about a trip they went on or something they heard happen to a friend? Learning moments, fun moments, whatever you would like. All right. Well, if people don't have any more questions, I think I will stop the recording now. I remember how to do that.